On the steppe of Central Asia, Mongols live a timeless way of life. They ride across the plain in search of food and water for their herds, just as their ancestors have for thousands of years. Long admired for their equestrian skills, the Mongols are counted among the finest horsemen in the world. In fall months, when the grasslands are carpeted emerald green, people spend much of their time outdoors enjoying the warm weather. There is much work to be done. Tending the sheep, taming the horses, and milking the mares, cows, sheep, and goats. The scarcity of water, combined with a growing season about 60 days, limits what can be produced in cultivated crops. Therefore, the Mongols are almost totally reliant on herding what are commonly called the five snouts: the horse, cow, camel, sheep, and goat. Horses in particular occupy a special place in Mongolian culture. Despite these age-old customs, Mongolia has entered a new era. Herdsmen can reach the market faster than ever. Making sour cream is easier than it used to be. And in the metropolitan areas, people live in apartment buildings. The famous Pony Express, used by Chinggis Khan's soldiers to transport messages from one end of the empire to another, has been replaced by a new method of communication. Mongols are seeing themselves in new ways and learning about the changes occurring around them. One of the first countries to break away from Soviet control and from a communist economy, Mongolia has had little contact with the West for the last 75 years. Yet this nation's rich history has inspired the world since Chinggis Khan and his descendants conquered half the world 800 years ago. Today, Mongol youth still ride across the open plain, conscious of their past and poised to meet the challenges of the future. The newly democratic nation of Mongolia in eastern Central Asia is bordered by Russia to the north, China to the south, and Kazakhstan to the west. Although Mongolia is the world's largest landlocked nation, with only 2 million people, it is one of the most sparsely populated countries in the world. % of the population live in Ulaanbaatar. Out in the grasslands, however, one can still ride for hours and not see another human being. The boundless steppe of Central Asia is a large, semi-dry, grass-covered plain. It has often been referred to as a hostile land, with harsh weather and little water or vegetation. The Mongolian people survived and met nature's challenges by moving with the herds. Winter, in particular, is a struggle. Even today, with animals confined to pens, herders must often fight to keep them alive. Howling winds and temperatures that often stay below freezing for weeks at a time make life difficult. The Mongolian felt tent, the ger, easy to assemble and readily portable, is well suited to nomadic life on the wind-swept plain. Although Mongolia is most closely associated with grasslands, the terrain is also marked by deserts, snow-capped mountains, rich forests, and pristine lakes. Some of the Mongols' classical songs praised the rugged high mountains known as the Hangai and Altai. The Gobi Desert, surprisingly varied with its sand dunes, graveled plains, and dry prairie, is also rich with perfumed grasses. There is a legend about a warrior's mother who tried to entice her wandering son home. When all her efforts had failed, she sent her son a batch of sweet-scented Gobi grass. The young man could not resist the smells of home and returned to his family. Where the young man ventured is left unsaid, but his commander may have been a man named Chinggis Khan, who at the end of the 12th century united the scattered tribes of the Mongolian steppe to create a nation. At the age of 12, after the murder of his father, Chinggis Khan began to build an empire that would stretch from the Mediterranean to the Pacific Ocean. In Europe, the name of Chinggis Khan evoked fear. Mongols, however, honored him. As depicted in these 15th century Persian manuscripts, Chinggis led his people to a position of wealth, power, and fame, and won them a permanent place in world history. After Chinggis's death, Ugadai, his third son, continued his father's conquests. His armies launched attacks into the Russian steppe to the north, south into China, as far west as what is known today as Iran and Hungary. The Mongol Empire reached its peak during the rule of Chinggis Khan's 4 grandsons, the most famous being Kublai Khan, who brought all of China under his command. To govern his conquests, Kublai moved the Mongol capital to Beijing and established what became known as the Yuan dynasty. It was during this period that the Venetian merchant Marco Polo traveled to Kublai's court. He returned to Italy with tales of an exotic and splendid culture. After Kublai's death in 1294, the empire slowly fell apart. By the 1370s, the Mongols were driven out of Beijing by the conqueror who would become the first emperor of the Ming dynasty, Zhu Yuanzhang. Today, the only trace of Chinggis Khan's great capital, Karakorum, is a stone tortoise that once served as the base of a pillar at the entrance of the old palace. In the 16th century, Altan Khan, a devotee of the third Dalai Lama, briefly united most of Mongolia. Altan Khan and the Dalai Lama are shown together in this 18th century Tibetan painting. Altan Khan's enduring legacy was his adoption of Tibetan Buddhism. In fact, it was Altan Khan who gave the head Lama of the Tibetan Yellow sect the title of Dalai Lama. In the 18th century, Buddhism flourished in Mongolia. Artists created magnificent, complex paintings, sculptures, and tapestries. Tsan Nabatser, a Buddhist monk born in 1635, was Mongolia's greatest sculptor. His gilt bronze sculptures are masterworks of religious devotion that combine the youthful and idealized beauty of the divine with a profound human tenderness. It is said he used his beloved consort as the model for the most beautiful of his female figures. Today there is a renaissance of art, culture, and religion that consciously emulates the glories of the 18th century. This comes after 70 years of Soviet influence. In 1921, after Mongolian and Russian fighters captured the capital city, the People's Government of Mongolia was declared. At that time, 1/3 of the male population were Buddhist monks. In the 1930s, the monasteries were closed, ransacked, and burned. Monks were arrested. Many were killed. Only 4 monasteries out of more than 700 were spared. Freedom of religion, which was restored in 1990, was followed by an almost immediate resurgence of Buddhist practice. Monasteries were reopened, and old lamas who had been preserving their religion in secret reappeared. Monks can once again make offerings, and young men now prepare to make lifetime religious commitments. Today, people from all walks of life embrace Buddhism. Because Mongols have always had to adapt to the forces of nature, there is a strong bond between the people and the environment. Ancient nomads thought all things in nature worthy of worship. Their religious leaders, called shamans, communicated with deities and acted as healers. One of the important shamanist gods is called Eternal Blue Heaven. It is believed he aided Genghis Khan in conquering the Asian continent. Shamans such as this woman still practice today. Traditionally, Mongols believed hills and mountains to be the seat of local deities. Mongols honor these gods with awaz, large piles of rocks decorated with tree branches and fragments of cloth. Festivals honoring the awa were held throughout Mongolia. Another important ritual is the tsam, a Buddhist dance. In the symbolism of this dance, masked performers representing the Buddhist protector deities destroy the obstacles of enlightenment. Many different characters appear in the tsam, including shamanistic Mongolian figures. Made of laminated paper and leather, the masks are adorned with paint, jewels, horsehair, and fabric. They are among the greatest artworks produced by the artist lamas of Mongolia. The nomad life has had a profound influence on Mongolian music. Singing has been a way to relieve loneliness on the steppe. Vocal styles vary, but home songs, sometimes known as throat singing, are particularly remarkable. The singer uses his chest and diaphragm to set up a constant bagpipe-like bass note, and then simultaneously uses his throat and nasal passages to create high harmonic notes and melodic whistling. Russian musical tradition also influenced the people of the steppe, and a social visit often turns into a festive occasion. Other music inspired by Western popular culture is being created by a new generation of contemporary musicians. Like so many Mongols, these performers struggle to embrace the future while paying homage to the past. The memory of Genghis Khan brings hope and inspiration, but it cannot provide prosperity and economic security. Today, more than half the population of Mongolia live in towns and cities. Youth in the countryside continue to move to the cities, hoping to become traders, bartering goods between China, Mongolia, Russia, and Eastern Europe. Men and women rush off in the morning to government, manufacturing, and industrial jobs. As in many contemporary societies, women often have to do a second shift of work: shopping, cooking, and cleaning. As in most countries in the world, shopping is a daily activity. In the evening, families spend time together playing a traditional sheep's knucklebone game or watching television. Yet city life can be difficult. With skyrocketing unemployment and inflation, it is not uncommon to find urban-educated Mongols wishing they had the traditional herding skills of their relatives in the countryside. Mongols face a tidal wave of changes and new influences never dreamed of by their ancestors. On the streets of the cities, the contrasts between old and new are a part of everyday life. There is hope that technology, urbanization, and industry will help build a new modern infrastructure for the nation. Herding will still play a central role, but the nomadic life may diminish as people in the grasslands become more settled. In the future, Mongols will probably not be as vulnerable to the whims of nature. Mongols see change as inevitable, yet the centuries-old connection between nature and the people will remain. This intimate relationship has guided them in the past and will propel them into the future.